So apparently the bad guys are up to it again, and Team Rocket has this time made off with $1 million worth of Pokemon cards and other collectibles on a recent robbery that occurred against a California-based hobby store. So in today's video, we'll talk again about what happened, why it happens, and potentially what you need to worry about, or at least what you can take away from news like this as you continue to collect in the Pokemon trading card game hobby. But before we do, as we always do, let's roll that intro. Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, we talk about this article from Game Rant that broke not that long ago, about 5 days ago, where Thieves stole $1 million worth of Pokemon cards and other collectibles from a California-based hobby store. So news like this has become pretty common and pretty frequent over the past few years, as collectibles have both increased dramatically in value and more scrutiny and or more of a spotlight has been placed on the value of trading cards. It's becoming more and more common to see, you know, these crazy Grand Theft Auto-esque heists where people are lifting various amounts of money worth of Pokemon cards and other collectibles, and that's just because it's actually pretty lucrative to do so. Now, YouTube, I want to make it very clear, I'm not advocating Grand Theft Auto style heists, but all I'm saying is if I was gonna do a heist, I'd at least make it worth 7 figures. So at least there's that. Am I right, YouTube? I'm probably right. Probably wrong. I don't know. But my point is that, you know, for $1 million heist, it's actually worth it. Unlike robbing like your average, Brinks truck, which, you know, might have a couple $1,000s in it, but there's not, you know, there's stiffer penalties for robbing a Brinks truck as opposed to, you know, stealing like from a store, right? So what's interesting about this is that this is the first time I've seen news that is not only garnering pretty significant attention, like national kinds of attention, like it's being shown on things like CBS News, but is also worth so much money. And I guess that's the whole point behind my poorly delivered joke, is that, yeah, this is like a pretty significant heist. And, you know, it rises to the level of like one of those things you hear about in the news, right? Which is exactly what's happening. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, a couple things to note. One, the article will be down below. Make sure to go show Game Rant some love. Second thing is there is actually footage from the store that we will go ahead and cover in today's video, so I will leave a link to that down below if you so happen to know one of the perpetrators of this crime, allegedly. You should probably do the right thing and go ahead and get in contact with local authorities. However, with all that said, the one other thing that I wanted to note is Happy April Fools. I'm glad I was able to get some of you with my wacky antics. Fun fact, the EX Hole-On Phantoms box is real. So that is a real box that I bought. The only difference is that the April Fool's part was that I was ever going to open it. I will be keeping that box sealed in my collection. Expect a mail day a little bit later on once some other stuff that I've bought comes in, and then I'll go ahead and do one mail day video where I kind of show you guys all of the stuff that I bought, including a look at that box again. But yeah, happy April Fools, everybody. Love you guys. Anywho, onto this thing. So, the article starts that a group of thieves reportedly stole $1 million worth of Pokemon cards and other collectibles. Big disclaimer here, it's not just Pokemon cards, so they didn't just make off with like 8 cases of first edition base set boxes. There were other things they stole as well. This happened in a California-based hobby store, and security footage of the incident has actually been posted online in hopes of catching the perpetrators. So, the hobby notes that it can be an expensive hobby, it's a lucrative business, and that, you know, there are some people who are lucky enough to find old binders full of classic and rare Pokemon cards, but others take a more violent route to get their hands on them. So in Burbank, California, a hobby store named Captain Fish Collectibles lost $1 million worth of collectibles after 3 men, get this, crashed their truck into the security gate. I'm talking like Kool-Aid Man style. And then CCTV footage shows them ransacking through racks and cabinets, because obviously stores like this will typically have a lot of those glass display cases where things can be, you know, shown and highlighted, and, you know, folks can peruse and purchase at their leisure. And basically, yeah, this is literally like the Grand Theft Auto 5 level, where you literally just break the glass cabinets and take stuff. So stealing valuable merchandise in less than 7 minutes. So interestingly enough, this seems to have been, at least in some part, a organized attempt on this store. The store's co-owner told CBS that the men took comics, loose boxes, cards, including Pokemon and NBA, and a signed pair of Kobe Bryant sneakers. Here's what I could find on a signed pair of Kobe's shoes, just as like a price point to show you like how much they could possibly be worth against the overall $1 million price tag on this heist. It just goes to show the pure volume of stuff that they stole, right? He added that Captain Fish Collectibles was the third stop to be robbed in the area within 2 months. So interestingly enough, that gives me another kind of idea. So typically when you see a pattern like this one, where, hey, it's in a localized area, it's the same type of shop, a collectibles store, and it's the third one in 2 months, it begins to establish perhaps a little bit of a pattern. Law enforcement in the area may also be obviously very privy to that, and so it's probably likely being investigated as a situation where perhaps the same group or set or network of individuals are the folks that are kind of working on this stuff. It's still unclear whether the same trio was also responsible for the last 2 robberies, but I promise you, even though we have yet to confirm that from a public perspective, I'm sure law enforcement is theoretically working that angle as well, seeing if it's an organized group of individuals or if this was just a one-off done by these folks. But they reportedly happened only 15 miles from Burbank, which again is an interesting thing, because when you see this kind of stuff happening within a localized area, you know, 15 miles is nothing. I mean, maybe in California traffic it's different, but 15 miles is realistically not that deep, you know, assuming you're on a highway that again doesn't have California traffic. It should take you about 15 minutes to get there. So realistically, they clearly had a truck they were willing to crash through a security gate. They probably have another truck that they could drive 15 minutes in. But yeah, so this is really interesting because this is the video that I noted. So this is the security camera that is in the store, and you can see here, I'm not going to play it, but I will leave a link down below. CBS 2 News Los Angeles actually has coverage on this, which is, I think, really interesting for a variety of reasons. One, obviously, this is a huge dollar amount robbery, and so for multiple reasons local news will probably be covering it, but I think it's also interesting because it highlights the value that collectibles have. You know, for years it's kind of been known or kind of coyly hinted to, like, yeah, collectibles are high value, but you know, sometimes they're also just meh, whatever, you know. But now, you know, to see that theoretically a crime ring or at least 3 individuals are willing to target a store and commit a robbery like this one, I think it kind of goes to highlight the value that collectibles can have, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing, as I'll kind of highlight as we move to wrap up this article. So here's the good news. Fortunately, the security camera managed to capture the face of one individual. So at least one of these Team Rocket ne'er-do-wells does have their face captured clearly, and so many people online express sympathy for what happened. They say that they're hoping it's gonna bounce back, and that, you know, theoretically with that person's face now exposed, or at least in part, there is a good chance that they will be able to identify that individual and perhaps move to pursue justice against the perpetrator of this crime. This is, however, just one of many incidents, the article highlights, where thieves have stolen Pokemon cards, and this is kind of where I'm going with this. So back in September, a thief was caught stealing $20,000 worth of Magic the Gathering cards, and then trying to sell it back to the burgled store. Meanwhile, other reported Pokemon-related crimes have included armed robberies, police chases, and even shootings. So if you think you're in the hobby of shiny cardboard and sealed booster boxes, you're wrong. You're literally in Grand Theft Auto and you just don't know it yet. one thing that I did want to stop and point out, yeah, this $20,000 article, I've seen a lot of these, right? But when you're comparing it, $20,000 is significantly less than 1 million. And I think that's what makes this really stand out to me, is that $1 million is a lot of stinking money. You could buy a house on Zillow with that kind of money. Am I right? But what's insane to me is that, yeah, like this store had that much right then and there. And also just absolutely absurd that, that much money could be stolen in, you know, 1 7-minute heist. So the article goes on to note and kind of conclude on the fact that the value of trading cards can be incredibly high depending on the rarity. This we already know. I really don't think these guys were stealing boxes of Chilling Pain and Evolving Lies. They were probably going after some of the rare, more vintage, more scarce items that were in the store. Apart from Pokemon TCG, you know, other brands like Magic also have rare cards, which are hilariously expensive. Frankly, you know, I believe it's a Black Lotus. That card alone could have been a significant portion of the $1 million stolen here. And then, you know, the article kind of summarizes in what I think is a really nice statement. While this is something that a dedicated collectors would give an arm and a leg for, it's understandable that they, as well as the hobby store owners, would feel terrified if someone would have put them in danger just to steal prized possessions. And I think that's a really, really interesting bit of commentary on the hobby. So in the past, you know, no one ever thought Pokemon was going to be this life-risking event, you know what I mean? You collected your cards, you keep them in your binder, but I guess a story like this, at least as I'm reading it, really kind of highlights the necessity for certain things within this hobby nowadays. Obviously, if you have some really rare cards or some really rare booster boxes or things of the sort, it's obviously very, very important for you to keep your personal information, you know, personal and confidential and not known to the general public. You know, I have my P.O. box, not my home address, down below, because when I do business with folks, I don't want them to know exactly where I live. And simultaneously, you know, it's the Analytic Gengar and not, you know, insert person social security number here, because you want to make sure that you're in a position where you're not giving too much information away and putting yourself or your family or others in danger. Because again, a card worth $30,000-$40,000, I mean, hey, a card worth $200 is enough to get robbed over, right? People get their iPhones stolen out of their hands every single day across every major city and probably every single state here in the United States every single day. I think that's one of the most common crimes that occurs. And then to think that there are many Pokemon cards equal to or greater than, in terms of value, and to think that those could be the target of a crime, of a robbery, of a violent robbery, heavens forbid, is, you know, becoming more and more of a relevant bit of commentary that Pokemon card collectors have to consider. And so I think it's always helpful to kind of bear that in the back of your mind, especially as you're going about, you know, taking photos, doing geotags. If you happen to have the same Instagram that you eat and take a photo at, and then tag that location, and then simultaneously show off some of your Pokemon cards, again, just remember, there is a standard amount of internet security and safety that you can practice that can help you as a collector avoid, you know, kind of weird or wacky things that might go on. And again, you know, people are more and more desperate, it seems, every single time. These guys were willing to drive a truck through a security gate, which sounds like some pretty big time heist movie stuff. So I'm not calling them Ocean's 11, but what I am saying is that, you know, if they're willing to do that, there are other people who are going to be just as willing to break into a house or meet up and rob you. And again, those are the types of things that you should now be considering if you haven't already been. Hopefully it's common sense to everybody, and this video is just, you know, another gentle reminder along the way. But in theory, you want to ensure that you're practicing that basic level of security, and then, you know, the advanced level of security on top of that where appropriate, to make sure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen to you. And obviously not everyone owns a collectible store, right? So not everyone's going to have this kind of setup, but you know, even the bare basics like a security camera. You could go on Amazon nowadays. I will leave a link down below, but like a Kasa security camera inside your home isn't a bad thing. You can download the app, you could stick a SD card in there, and boom, done. You know, you've got at least something that would theoretically record a point of entry or your collection or something of the sort. Yeah, so just that kind of bare minimum security basics I think really kind of helps. Obviously you could do something more extreme like a safety deposit box, but at that point you move into the risk versus reward scenario where you really have to start weighing the benefits, right? Are you really going to want to pay for a offsite safety deposit box versus what it is you're storing in there? Because again, if you're sticking some chilling paint in there, I get it, prices are up, it's time to pump and dump, you know, Mr. Hot Hands over here, but at the same time, it's a chilling, like in all seriousness, it is just a chilling rain booster box. You know, it's $135. And then if you're going to pay $135 to store it over the course of a year, I just don't see it increasing in value to offset the cost of that. So, just a couple of random musings as I kind of read an article like this one. When I was reading this, obviously, just this past Saturday, I showed off a $23,000 booster box, right? Like, that's like the estimated value right about now. PokeRev had it about 30K. I believe the value is somewhere in between there, really just due to kind of market fluctuations, but it just kind of goes to show you, right? That is a significant amount of value that if I had cash in my pocket, I guarantee you the general public would be very interested to have that cash fall out of my pocket so that everybody could come and grab it, right? So now the value is instead stored in a booster box, and as a result of that, you now need to ask the question, how do I adequately protect that like I would jewelry, like I would another significant valuable that's maybe more traditionally acceptable? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it's traditionally accepted or not, it does still have the value assigned to it, right? If the market value on a diamond watch or a gold watch was $25,000, we'd probably keep it in a, you know, safe or a very secure location. And similarly, $25,000 in Pokemon cards should be kept in the same exact way. So as a bit of a takeaway for us regular folks that aren't a collectibles store, definitely remember those bare minimum basic security steps you can take will always help kind of keep you safe, and just exercise common sense when it comes to things like meetups, like talking with people on the internet, because that kind of stuff can both keep you safe and keep your collectibles safe, where obviously the priority is just making sure that you as an individual are safe. And then, finally but not least, I did want to just speak super quickly to the store as well. So obviously, Captain Fish Collectibles lost $1 million worth of collectibles, right? In all likelihood, there are some items that might be traceable, assuming they don't get caught, right? So if these guys were actually able to get away with this crime and disappear with this stuff, there are some things that there's genuinely not going to be a trace on. So things like the boxes and the individual loose cards, I don't necessarily know are ever going to be traceable. You know, anecdotally, you could say, okay, here's a picture of their store inventory versus the shifty eBay listing that just popped up, and it looks like they are the same item, right? But it's really hard to prove that, as opposed to something like a graded card or a graded comic, or, you know, an authenticated pair of Kobe Bryant sneakers. And the reason that is because normally the COAs on this stuff will have a unique serial number. So that with things like that, it's often a million times easier to identify this stuff as stolen merchandise, because the store should have that stuff in their inventory system, and when it pops up on eBay, they can flag it as stolen merchandise. So it kind of helps. Now, all things considered, in my head, the first thing that kind of popped up is, well, they lost $1 million, but hopefully that means they have, at minimum, a couple $1 million worth of insurance that prevents against things like fraud and loss. So in theory, they should be invoking a insurance policy right now in order to reclaim some of those losses. Now, while I can understand the argument that insurance can help cover some of the losses. The problem is that for anybody who's unfamiliar with insurance in the Pokemon trading card game or collectible space, it's very finicky. Because insurance policies in general usually don't want to pay money. And when they do want to pay money, they're going to go off a variety of different metrics that can be completely different from the way that we as a hobby value our merchandise. And especially in a place like Pokemon, where we're just beginning to emerge into prominence in all seriousness, it can be very, very tough. For something like a pair of Kobe Bryant sneakers, a signed basketball, a signed jersey from the MLB, you know, that stuff is so well documented in terms of sales and losses and thefts and robberies that insurance has kind of evolved as an industry to kind of reflect that. So now they're probably going to go on the PSA website, look up the most recent sale of a similar type of thing, and then that's what they're going to write a check for the Kobe Bryant sneakers. However, on the flip side, something like Pokemon, I've literally heard stories like all the way down in the deep depths of Reddit where they look at something like a WotC first edition box from back in the day, they Google the MSRP of that, and the person writing the checks on the insurance side or the person doing the investigation will literally give an itemized list of what was stolen and then their response to how much will be paid. And you'd be surprised to find out that oftentimes for something like a fossil box, they won't pay market value based on the eBay last sold. They will pay MSRP of what Pokemon was selling the box for. So you might have bought the box at $5,000 and it might currently be worth $7,000, and magically, somehow, some way, these guys decide the box is only worth $100 because that's MSRP from back in the day. And so that is the kind of pain that this store could be going through right now. So for those individuals who might, you know, have the quick comment like, hey, these guys have an insurance policy, they'll be all right, do bear in mind there's a ton of nuance to that stuff, and at the end of the day, it could still end up being a major loss to them if these individuals are not caught and brought to justice. And of course, the other thing to bear in mind is that, you know, they didn't lose a Rolex watch or an Omega Speedmaster that they could just go online real quick and buy another one of. Many of the collectibles that they lost, just based on my own assumptions, will be things that are truly one of a kind, you know, or very limited in scale, scope, and overall availability. So, you know, just as an example, if you steal a PSA 10 that's worth a ton of money, you got to look up the pop, and you got to consider that. You know, no two collections are alike, but when you're looking at something like $1 million in loss, that's truly probably a one-of-a-kind kind of collection, and no amount of money is really going to replace the kind of goodwill and nostalgia that also adds to the value and uniqueness of that collectible collection. So, with all that said, friends, thanks again for checking out another video. As always, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your viewership. So, thanks for taking the time out of your day to spend a little bit of time with me and check out some of my content. Let me know down below if you would like to get added to Ryan's list of people to rob. Otherwise, remember your basic internet security standards, and let me know down below if you all would like a video on the Kasa security camera. I personally use a bunch of them around the house here and there, just for like life. But I do think there is some value in using it if, you know, you so happen to keep some part of your collectibles in your house. They're a great and simple way of just kind of having a security camera without all the crazy convoluted steps that usually get involved. So let me know if there's interest in something like that. I could do a review and show you guys how to potentially set one of those up in your home in the context of keeping a collectibles collection safe, so that you too can have video like this that helps you to monitor and keep your collection safe. But other than that, friends, thanks again for checking out another video. I appreciate you guys as always, and we will talk soon. Peace.